Okay, I always start by asking, how many of my typing sessions have you seen before?
Quite a few, probably about 20.
Okay. When you're watching them, do you feel as though you know what I'm looking for when I'm asking certain kind of questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. Can you tell me a little bit about your media consumption habits other than YouTube? Like what kind of TV shows or movies or books you like?
I like non-fiction books, stuff about psychology and things like that. I like reality TV. I don't watch a whole lot of it, but when I get into something, I tend to binge watch it.
Like Big Brother?
Um, yeah, things like that. And I kind of feel guilty about liking it, but I'm interested in people, like how they interact with each other with no storyline and no set, no music, nothing apart from their relationships. I guess that's what I'm into, really.
Have you ever watched Naked and Afraid?
No,
Yeah, it's a survival show, you know.
I
Yep.
know I saw a few clips of it, but I don't know. I haven't got into it, but it's probably up my street.
Okay, so how long have you been interested in typology and MBTI stuff?
Since August, when I got COVID and I couldn't go out and I felt like I was dying, so I thought I need to get into something to stimulate my brain. And then I read Psychological Types as well by Carl Jung. And then I went around a whole bunch of YouTube channels and then I found yours and it's just my favorite. I've learned more from you than anybody else. So,
Well, thanks. That's very nice of you to say. Okay, so can you can you describe how getting into typology has impacted the way in which you interact with the world in general? Like, when you go places and you talk to somebody, do you go, oh, that person might be a yeah, or how is it trickled down?
yeah, I do tend to guess which types people are, but afterwards, when I'm thinking about the interaction, not actually when I'm having the interaction. And then I doubt myself and think, oh, I'm probably wrong. But I always feel like I know what my type is and what everybody else's is, and then I'll just feel like I'm wrong about everything.
Okay, I see a guitar back there. Do you play music?
Yeah, I started learning guitar when lockdown first happened, and I play the piano. I'm a vocal coach by trade, and I'm in a band, and I do some producing. So that's what I've always done. Yeah.
Are you in Australia?
No, England.
England. It's funny. For some reason I cannot tell. I always get them. It's like I think I'll say to Australian people, "Are you English?" And they'll tell me they're Australian. Now here I am doing the opposite to you.
I'm from Manchester though, so it's not. You probably don't
Oh,
hear
you
this
sound like the
accent as
Beatles.
much.
You sound like the
Yeah,
Beatles, right?
exactly.
Okay. Even though they're from Liverpool, maybe it's a
Yeah,
similar
but
accent.
it's all right.
Okay. So, can you talk to me about the experience when you had COVID, like how you physically felt and like, how that impacted you in general? What measures you took to take care of yourself and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was really interesting because I've always been the type of person who's just on the go all the time. I don't eat at the right times, I never sleep. I'm quite messy. But having COVID forced me to slow down, and the only thing I could do was sort of self-care stuff. So really being meticulous about drinking enough water, because I had to be, because I was at death's door basically, because I've got an underlying condition, and I experienced life for the first time ever at a slow pace, where I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. So it was weird, and it's this kind of stayed with me a little bit actually. And I did Heidi Prieb's course for ENFPs, which I thought I was, but I'm not sure. And that was all about how we shouldn't put pressure on ourselves to work at a slow and steady pace. We should just use our bursts of inspiration when they come and recognize when that's happening. And that helped me to feel kind of okay about the fact, because I've always believed that I'm lazy, but I'm
That's
not
awfully good
lazy.
advice from her.
Yeah, I really felt like she understood where, who I was really. Yeah, and that's really helped me. COVID was horrible physically, but I've benefited from it because I've done different things that I wouldn't have normally done and got into typology as well. And usually I would have got bored by it by now, and I haven't. So it means that, it'll probably stick. I'm getting more and more into it. So
So how do you do with the TI questions in general?
not bad actually, and because I've seen so many of your typings, I'm probably better at it now because I've formulated my own little system for visualizing the questions. But now, because I'm nervous, I'll probably get them all wrong.
Okay. Well, I will try to ask you some unusual structures.
Oh no, I should have said that. I should have said, oh, it's so hard.
Okay, so if some if some pigs oink, and only things that oink are pink, can we necessarily conclude that some pigs are pink?
Yes.
No.
See, told you.
Okay. Who is my mother's father's only daughter in relation to me?
Mother.
Okay. Who is my father's sister's only son's only cousin in relation to me?
Father's. See, my dad hasn't got a sister, so it doesn't work. Father's sister's only son's only cousin. Is it me?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so this is really interesting to see in action here. What you just did was what I've talked about before, but never really seen displayed quite so evidently, which is you go first to your actual family when I ask these questions. Like you think of
Yeah.
actual family members, right? Which is
Yeah.
strange to me because when I think of these questions, there's no actual people attached to them at all.
Really? Wow, that's weird.
Yeah, I just think of it as a word problem, you know. So okay,
Wow.
let's try some TE style questions. Can you solve? Have you heard me ask this in the recent one where I asked somebody to solve California's drought problem?
No, not heard that one.
Okay, can you solve California's drought problem, please?
California's drought problem. So California is experiencing lack of rain at the moment, is it?
Yeah, in general,
Um,
we get too little rainfall each year for a while now. Let me refill my coffee while you think about that for a second.
okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Am I in charge, or am I just coming up with ideas?
I guess you're just coming up with ideas.
So, I mean, if it isn't something that I know about, then I would, go away and have a look at other country or like other places that have solved their drought problems. That's probably the sensible thing to do.
Okay. Can you come up with reasons why Britain should invade France?
Well, we have always been quite a small country, so it would be nice if we could merge with France, and then we would have more land. And the French are quite nice people, so it might be good to mesh with their culture.
It
The
might not be
food's
so nice
nice.
after you conquer them, though.
Yeah, I suppose that is a risk. Um, I think we're probably nicer when it comes to politics, so it might be good to have a good influence on the French in that way.
Okay. Those are all fine reasons. They're not very selfish. I mean, don't you want to seize all their resources?
Do France have a lot of resources?
Oh, they've got vineyards.
Yeah, not really for me as a non-drinker.
Okay. All right. So, when you're watching some sort of story media, which is to say, like it's a sitcom or a movie or a historical drama or something like that, what are you looking for to keep your attention?
I think it's the characters for me. I like characters that I feel are nuanced and multifaceted and realistic in sort of terms of, oh, if I was in that situation, that's how I would act.
Okay.
So yeah, it's characters really, and then how it makes me feel as well, like with the music and the storyline and the way people are doing things, like how it makes me feel on the inside. That's probably a thing as well. Or I just like to be made to laugh. But I think things like storyline and like the cinematography is probably at the bottom of the list.
Okay. Let's talk about, you have world mic power. World mic power means you give some piece of statement or advice that's less than 30 seconds long that everybody in the world gets broadcast to them in whatever their own language translated into it. So you speak your advice and everybody in the world hears it. You have world mic power. What do you have to say?
I would say don't be afraid to always be yourself and do what you think is right.
And
Unless you're Hitler.
do you think you uphold that value in general in your own life?
No, but it really means a lot to me. I think I do probably more than the average person, but to me, I notice when I don't do it. So to me, it feels like I need to do better.
Okay, and when you don't do it, what's happened to interfere with your natural pursuit of what's most authentically true to you?
It's probably fear, lack of courage, or something's getting in the way to do with another person. I don't want them to feel badly about me. Might be that. Uh,
What would
yeah, it's
what
probably
would
lack of courage.
what would bug you more if you were guilty of it in a given situation? Being not the lack of courage or the being influenced by somebody else?
Oh, So they are very close, but I'll go with being influenced by somebody else.
Okay. If you're going to be scolding yourself after interacting with somebody, is it more likely you're scolding yourself for accidentally having hurt their feelings or accidentally been rude?
I mean, if I was rude and it didn't hurt them, then it wouldn't bother me. So I guess it would be hurting somebody's feelings.
Okay. Do you do do you have like harm prevention on your mind regarding certain possessions and or like maybe a pet or something that that you take protocols to make sure stay nice and don't get messed up?
Like, what's an example?
Well, like your guitar is leaning against the wall over there.
No, it's on a
Oh,
stand.
it's on a stand. Okay, so then that's taking some sort of well, it depends. You could be protecting it, or you could just find that more convenient to put it on.
Yeah, I am protecting it, but I am quite careless with my possessions sometimes.
Okay.
But if, like, when I was younger, if somebody says to me, like, that guitar is on a stand because somebody once said to me, if you lean it against a wall, it will bend the neck. So ever since then, I've never leant a guitar against a wall. But I think I probably would do had that person not said that.
That's that really feels familiar to me as a fourth slot SI kind of a thing. I've got lots of examples of things like that too. So that does resonate with me as fourth slot SI, but I'm still not sure what type you are at all, really. It would appear you're probably TI polar, which would narrow it down to two things. But I want to confirm these with other points, including some intuitive things. So it's like you don't have the usual affect of an extroverted, either an extroverted sensor or an extroverted intuitor. Usually, either type's a little bit more gregarious, I guess. So, but I mean, I don't usually put a lot of weight on affect because you already indicated that your affect somewhat changed with being laid out for a stretch, right? So there's that factor. But would you say you're being more or less gregarious than normal in your conversation with me now?
Less, I would say.
Okay. So let me ask you about your definition of truth. What do you think truth is?
So it's something that is.
Something that is?
I think there's a full stop after that. Yeah. Truth is, yeah, it's just something that is.
Okay.
So
All right. Do you write your own songs mostly, or do you learn a lot of covers, or some combination of the two, or what?
yeah, combination of the two. I write my own songs and I work on other people's songs as well, which I prefer actually because I have boundaries. I like to have a brief and I have to work in a certain boundary because when I write my own songs, it takes me ages and ages to finish them, and I won't stop going back and changing them until it's perfect, and then I get bored with it. So I never finish anything, and it's super complicated. But when I have an actual brief, I have to do it for somebody else or within a time frame. I really like that, and I get into the flow and
So you feel like when you're writing your own songs, they come out unnecessarily complicated?
maybe not unnecessarily. I think I don't produce as much work as I could because I get too pernickety about details and about the way it makes me feel when I listen back to it as well.
Yeah, it's got to be tough having both FI and SI in the front stack.
I thought that I had those in the front stack.
Yeah. So, are you? Can you talk to me about your yawning and or stretching ways? Are you a natural yawner, stretcher, or do you find yawning contagious?
Yeah, well, I heard you ask that question the other day, so I've actually noted what I do now, and yeah, I love having a good stretch, which I wasn't actually aware of before you'd said that. And yeah, contagious yawning, yeah, definitely, yeah.
That's very fourth slot SI any dumb as well because it's like it's weird the way that we don't notice really SI stuff without the map to tell us to look for it. I think that
Right.
probably be common to both ENFPs and ENTPs. I think you are an ENFP. But let me see what I can do to double check this. Okay, can you talk to me about your relationship with task completion? Like, let's say you talked about how you prefer to be working on a project for another person. I also get that because then all of a sudden your NE has externally provided boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yes.
how does it come? How do you deal with the getting tasks done on time, stuff like that?
So, well, it depends what it is, obviously. If it's something really boring, I've got a habit of putting it off, and getting really stressed over it and hating myself. When I did Heidi Preeb's course, actually, that has helped me to get more on top of those mundane tasks because I've found that if I write it down, it's almost like the list becomes my master and I have to do it because the list's telling me to, which is a bit weird. Um, I have become better recently. I really have since COVID. Um, Anything that I enjoy, I get excited about it, and then if I go and do it, then I will succeed at that task. That's when I succeed the most, is when I feel really excited about doing something. But if I put it off till tomorrow and I don't feel the same way, then I don't want to do it anymore.
All right. Well, do you experience a how distant is the light at the end of the tunnel phenomenon? That if a task is going to comprise a longer stick to itiveness than your initial burst of enthusiasm, that if, if you can't see the light at the end of the if you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, that initial burst of enthusiasm will carry you through to the completion of it. But if you can't, if it's a couple of days away, you go, ay ay ay, what did I start here?
It depends what it is. So, like, if I was like painting my living room, I would see the light at the end of the tunnel, which would be like showing it to people or just sitting there and basking in it. So that would keep me going. Songwriting is not, songwriting is different because I can be excited about that even though I'm not going to finish it anytime soon because I keep learning new things. So it's stimulating enough without it having an end goal, basically.
Okay, interesting. So okay, do you think that it's easier to see the light at the end of the tunnel with physical tasks in general than with metaphysical tasks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would do a physical task if there was no light. I mean, yeah, there wouldn't be a point of me even doing it.
Well, I guess such tasks are what you call maintenance tasks, like washing your washing your clothes. There's never a light at the end of the tunnel. They're just gonna get dirty again. You're just gonna have to wash them again. Or like
Yeah,
making the bed. Do you make your bed in the morning? When you
yeah, I do. Which, yeah, I always make my bed. I'm very sensitive to, I feel like I let myself down if I don't do things like that. Like, I really like making sure I'm groomed, and my house isn't very tidy, but if someone's coming round, I tidy it for them. I think doing things like that is tied up with my self-esteem, I think.
well, it's I would suspect that the six slot things you get mad at yourself for is mostly I'll tend to collapse down to six slot stuff. So you'd get mad at yourself if you didn't clean up before somebody came over. You saw them kind of looking at the mess, and then later you regretted not having cleaned up before they came over or something. That sounds consistent with six slot. Of course, FE people will do that. FE people will clean up before people come over. They'll live in squalor until they know someone's coming over. Then they'll clean up, you know. But it makes sense that six slot demonstrative FE would come out here when sort of pushed on by questions, and you revealed that. That it's, you know, you also said about the paint. You saw there as being two applications to it. One being showing it to other people, and the other being sitting and basking in the glow of it. I don't necessarily see that showing other people something you're proud of as being an FE thing inherently. I would say that's you know, anybody who's done something that improves their space or something like that is going to want to share it with other people in some regard. And so it's like that plot, and those kind of things, FE and FI kind of maybe mushed together.
Yeah, I think I kind of get, it's a little bit embarrassing admitting this, but I'm quite concerned about my self-image, like how I'm perceived by other people. I like to be in control of that.
Well, yeah, I've said before that ESFPs, probably more than anybody else, I'm not saying you're an ESFP, but with the same slot function, you know, same function slot there with the FE. The ESFPs, probably more than anybody else, want to tell everybody else how to perceive them. ENFPs are somewhat more nuanced at that process and probably do a lot more rumination about their own inclination to control other people's perceptions of them and whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. They probably are the proponents of the old man, the donkey, and the little kid story. You know that story?
No, I don't think so.
It's like there's an old man, a donkey, and a little kid walking along until somebody says, "Why are you making that old man walk? He should ride the donkey." And so the old man gets on the donkey, and then the next person they see comes along and goes, "Why are you riding, old man? And the child has to walk. Let the child ride." And so they switch places, and then someone else comes around and says, "Why are you encumbering this donkey so? It looks like it's tired. Why don't you get off and let it walk by itself?" And then they both get off again. And then at some point they end up carrying the donkey. So that's the story of FI lecturing FE about what people shouldn't do. People shouldn't be influenced by others to change their ways necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, when I said here's world mic power, it seemed like basically you were saying is, don't be like the guy and the child and the donkey.
Yeah. I feel like that's the highest truth. Like, if you're yourself, because even if you do something wrong, it doesn't matter because you learn from it. And everything will play out as it should do. There's kind of like a natural order to that, because things that get in, this is my perception anyway, things that get in the way of people being authentic are always bad things, like, you know, not being fully realized, or trauma or fear, or it's negative things. So if you know, it seems more natural and like the way the world should be, if everyone is authentic, even if evil happens.
Okay. So in that regard, it's like kind of the FI calculus and TI calculus they tend to agree with each other in that area. Exactly how that expresses in public policy, however, is typically very different in their expressions of it. Like TI also doesn't want external factors limiting the individual's ability to determine things for themselves and be free from external influence and deciding what's correct or not. So it's interesting that both the deliberation tool function, they they share a prioritization of the individual over the group, but it doesn't necessarily express that way politically for both sides equally. So, what would you say? Do you Are you currently in a long term relationship?
No, I've been single for a long time.
Okay. So, what's your perspective on ideal mate, or what you'd like somebody to provide for you in a relationship?
It'll need to be somebody who's very emotionally stable, who's not going to encroach on me in any way, and who's not going to need me, but they can need me in a certain way, but not in a way where I feel invaded. So I don't like dealing with other people's emotions, because I have to deal with my own, and that's enough.
Okay. So you sound. Have you looked into Enneagram at all?
Yeah, well, I think I was a 4.
Okay, well, that would make sense. More specifically, what I was referring to are the so-called instinctual variants. You sound very self-preserving. So,
Yeah,
in other words,
definitely.
like the three instinctual variants are sexual, which is basically you see yourself as ideally part of a two-person team, a couple. And when you're in a couple, you see yourself as us, and everything's all shared, and you spend all your time together, like me and Rachel do, basically. Or you're self-preserving, in which case, even if you get coupled up, you expect each party to be maintaining an independent self of each other, and the relationship is just, it's like consistently rely upon the other person to be there for specific kind of relationship things, but not share a single life. And then the social subtype is the one that sees the couple as part of a larger group, and it's like your power couple or whatever that always shows up places together and handles the social perceptions of themselves as a couple and hosts parties and stuff like that.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I think I wish I was the type of person like that would enjoy being in a relationship like yours and Rachel's, because it looks really warm and easy.
It's easy, yeah.
But when I have, that hasn't been my experience. I was with somebody for a long time who was like that. He loved me, but I still felt invaded by it, and I don't know why. Might be something that I have to look at. But realistically, I just know what I'm like. I get very repelled by people. That sounds terrible.
I mean, it doesn't sound terrible to me. It sounds like you know who you are and what you like and what you don't like, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a tough lesson for ENTPs to learn. I really, even more than an EFP does, I need the map first before I can really understand myself or anybody else. And without cognitive functions, there was no proper map really to understand people. So I was using an assortment of half-assed, inadequate maps, and I needed this as a meta frame to kind of recognize the importance of introverted feeling in my own expression of self, which otherwise would have just gone completely unnoticed.
Yeah.
So, what questions, thoughts, issues you'd like to talk about, or
Well, I was going to ask you, when I'm in conflict with somebody, I'm it's when I'm feeling attacked, if I'm defensive, um, I will I go into like this different mode, and it's like debate tactics, and I'm really accurate with debating. Like I heard some of your older videos where you were talking about your relationship with Kim, and you were so frustrated because she just wouldn't trust that you were right about things sometimes, and you just kept trying to get her to see the your rationale of things, and she just refused to. that reminded me of, I go into that mode, and people have said that I'm really good at it as well. And it confused me for a while, because I felt like that was a TI thing. But I would never, it's almost like I use it like a weapon rather than it being a natural part of me.
I mean, I think it's a deliberation tool function thing. So, in other words, people who have an action type first, action function first, and then a deliberation function second, are people who take a lot of action in the world based on what they've determined for themselves to be correct or true, and they use either a an experiential kind of deliberation, which is FI, or they use a communicative kind of deliberation, which is TI. Either way, they're going to conclude that what they understand to be so is more desirable than the other things, because after all, they've taken the time to think it all out one way or the other, or feel it all out, and come to a conclusion about it. And they've got good reasons, one way or the other, to uphold this conclusion as preferable to the other ones. So in that case, what happens is both types, ENFPs and ENTPs, can get kind of argumentational. So if you've seen I don't know if you happen to see any of my recent videos on Dr. Les Carter. But,
Yeah, the narcissist guy.
Yeah. So I'm pretty convinced he's an ENFP, and he makes me so mad. But what I realized since I've made those videos is I'm doing the same thing that makes me mad when you guys do it, which is I'm conflating the public and private frames of reference. So it's like, in my private relationships, I never do any of the things that he says are bad. In fact, I uphold all of the standards and protocols that he suggests, basically. I can't disagree with anything he says in terms of how I behave with Rachel or with anybody else in my life. I don't try to get into arguments with people. I don't correct them. It's like I care about the people in my life, right? But in the public discourse, I do correct people all the time. I am very argumentational. And so I am seeing his commentary on the private discourse as being commenting on my approach to the public discourse, when I should recognize, no, he's correct in his dominion with the FI stuff. And I'm correct in mine with the public discourse stuff.
Wow, that's really interesting. That I've been thinking about that recently. It was when you answered my question the other day on a video that you made about how, you might if you have an introverted function at the front, it's probably the one behind it that people are going to see, because that's the extroverted one.
Right. And in this context where you're being more like your intuition, your extroverted intuition and your introverted intuition are on like high alert right now in this conversation, which means you're actively, in other words, this is a much more active engagement than most engagements people have. So you're going to use your tool function more. It's going to show more, which is why sometimes I've in the past mistyped ENTPs as INTPs, and much less often mistyped ENFPs as INFPs. But the reason is because, and this is a dumb reason, but I get a certain feel from INFPs that they make me nervous, Whereas ENFPs, I get an immediate sense of, okay, we can speak to each other. As long as we avoid certain kinds of conflict points, we can talk to each other just fine,
Oh, that's really interesting. So what do you think, well, I just want to say a few things. I don't know whether you'd want to take these into account or not. Like recently, in the last few years, because I used to have an alcohol problem as well, and then I stopped it, and then I feel like I totally changed, like maybe not changed, but kind of grown into myself a little bit, and sometimes, you know, I can be quite, I'm sort of, I don't know, I guess it's the any, when I'm socializing. When I'm on my own, I'm so quiet and reflective and serious nowadays. So do you think if somebody's done a lot of therapy, or if they've kind of had a big life-changing event that's changed them, or like an addiction or something like that, I mean, I know it wouldn't affect the personality type, but do you think that certain aspects of the personality could have been stifled for all those years and then they would kind of blossom again, like, or blossom for the first
Absolutely.
time?
That's exactly what happened with me. You know, I had an alcohol problem. I quit when I was 42, I think, 40, yeah, something like that. And after that, prior to that, I had been busy protecting my drinking for FE reasons, and so I would just defer rather than run a risk of getting into conflicts, which people might call me out on my drinking. I was constantly trying to hide it, and so it made me a lot less, a lot less, a lot less expressing my tool function in my interactions with others, and more expressing my third slot function in interactions with others. So it's that would just be an affect thing, though. In reality, I was using TI in the sense that I was always operating under the NETI frame of reference, which is in what way could I lose this argument? And the answer was always the same. It was, well, they could say, yeah, but you're a drunk, and then you're fucked. What are you gonna do? Say to that, you know?
Yeah.
So did my affect change? Yeah. Did my level of comfort and confidence with myself change? Of course, much to the better, right? I was no longer scared all the time about my lack of control over alcohol. So yeah, I became a much more realized person. But I was still fundamentally operating the same frame of reference, TI, which is just if I'm safe because I'm not reckless, then I don't have to take extra precautions against losing arguments for things unrelated to what we're arguing about. So, I mean, it's absolutely the case that you're going to feel like a different person after you quit drinking. If you had a serious alcohol problem like I did, of course. But you're still going to use the same cognitive function stack. And your affect is going to change. In general, my affect has gotten calmer, more concise, a better combination of presenting a combination of warmth and competence than it used to. But I'm still using the same cognitive function stack.
Yeah, I can see that. It's the worst thing for an FI person to basically drink a load of booze and then have your body taken over for the night and go and do a bunch of things that you would never normally do, and then wake up in the morning. Like, that guilt is unbearable, you know. That's why I had to stop. Even if it wasn't that bad, just doing things that I didn't choose to do, it was just traumatic, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine. I had plenty of similar sorts of traumas, but it was always like an FE thing, like I'd embarrass myself or act like an ass or whatever, and then I just feel the shame shivers for.
Oh God, yeah.
Drink the shame shivers away, only to experience new shame shivers.
I know. I get those all the time. I don't think they're ever gonna go away.
Well, you know, I guess it's been. Well, the day after Christmas, I think it'll be 7 years for me, maybe 8. I'm not sure, one of those two. And I don't really remember too much. I don't spend too much time remembering my fuck ups from my drinking days now.
No. Well, that's good. That's a long time to be sober.
Yeah, well, let's celebrate that with a hearty bong rip. So, other thoughts or areas you'd like me to comment on, or questions, or anything like that? Because we got time left.
Um, well, I feel like I don't really understand TE. Obviously, I've got that in my stack. But well, here's what I understand. Um, like kind of like I've been building a website the past week. And it's like I've known what to do, and I don't know how I knew what to do. I just did it, and I enjoyed the process, and it felt intuitive and all of that, and like I've been in flow. But if I sat down and thought about, right, I have to build a website, what are the steps? I wouldn't have a clue. So I feel not very competent at thinking ahead of time a set of steps that I need to take. Like if I'm cleaning, for example, I don't know where to start. So instead of going, I've got to clean up, I say, I'm going to make the room look nice. And then it just happens. But if I try and plan the steps of cleaning up, I don't know what to do. So is that like a TE thing, low down in the front stack?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting in that it shows how the kind of TE I usually test with my break this down to a certain number of steps is actually the TE that converts to TIFE stuff. So it's like real TE is the process of figuring out. So when you say you successfully did this, but you weren't didn't know how you were going to do it going into it, that's TE. You started doing it and figured it out as you went along.
Oh, right. Oh, this makes so much sense. So this is like when I'm producing and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I find ways of hacking, like I find hacks or I find little ways of doing things that I want to do and I'll discover new things.
And that probably
That's
gives
probably the
you
same.
a lot of satisfaction to figure out the hows of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So like figuring things out as you go along.
So TE is the logic, your attention to the logic of things that have their own logic. So in other words, an application such as a recording application has its own logic to it. You have to understand that app and you have to learn how to use it. And so like I still use Audacity as my primary recording app because I've been using it for such a long time and I've learned so much about how to use it fast and effectively. But
Yeah.
other things that have their own logics are things like refrigerators or a guitar or whatever. Things that have a common logic, that's where TI addresses it, which is so-called black and white thinking or binary definitional parsing, like I typically do. So,
That makes so much sense. Yeah. Wow. I'm really glad to know that. So the NE then, is that more, does that take place more when I'm conversating with somebody?
well, I mean, your discussion of how you write music sounds to me like the exact description of any uncontained by FE so that it has a harder time getting to NI. You keep wanting to put all the new things you learn into one thing, and it doesn't work. So you abandon that one thing, then try to put it
Yeah.
put it all into a new thing, and that doesn't work. And you abandon that thing and try to put it all into a new thing. And each time you're learning more things, and you want to start a new thing to have everything you know fit into one thing. It'll never gonna happen. You need to let the
Oh my
things be
God.
independent little archetypes of each other, independent objects that exist independent of you once you've made them, that are archetypal. Yeah. It's hard for us to
Okay.
get that. I started trying to write music when I was a little kid, and the way I tried to write it was by making sure that everything that I put note wise, I was like writing it out on paper, like with staffs of
Yeah.
music, right? That everything I put on there note wise sounded different enough from the thing before it. So it just
Oh
all
my
everything I was
God.
writing was like do 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 blah 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 blah. And I thought, okay, I don't understand this, I guess, or something. My whole point was avoiding anything that sounded like anything.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. Yeah, it's like all the options. But I mean that. it just seems like I feel like that hinders me more than the other functions, but it's probably my top one.
I mean, the thing is, you've got to embrace as a mapping thing first the idea that you need to prioritize NI, which is concision and identity. That a given song needs to be what it is exactly and nothing else. And it needs to be, the ideal song is short, compact, and expressive of a very concrete, specific identity that sounds familiar and comfortable to people, but also surprises them. So it needs to have just a little bit of extroverted intuition. We have to learn to excise from our creations our extroverted intuition and prioritize this by a framing method first. So somebody had to tell me this before I accepted that it was true and then applied it. Prior to that, I didn't have any way to go forward. I had no map.
Wow, that's amazing. And that is how I work when I get a brief. It's NI, but then a sprinkling of NE, which makes it just a little bit more special than the average.
Right. Something's got to deviate from the expected at just the right spot and just the right amount. And then people go, ooh, that pops.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like music that does that. I like music that's not, I don't like crazy jazz or anything like that.
Right.
I do understand jazz,
We don't
but I
listen
like
to the
a
mistakes we
structure.
make. We don't listen to the
Yeah.
mistakes we make. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that song is by the Living Tombstone, and the chorus to it goes, "It's been so long since last I said a chance to see my daughter."
It's from Five Nights at Freddy's. My
Right.
son's obsessed. We're writing a Five Nights at Freddy's song at the moment, me and my son. And because he gave me the brief.
Uh
So
huh.
it's structured and it lasts for 3 minutes.
Okay, but the melody of that chorus that I just sang, that's a perfect example of something that is familiar, comfortable, and then surprising in a way that makes you just want to re-listen to that hook over and over again. It's got
Yep.
exactly the right elements of everything, so that the way that it goes up at that one spot a little bit,
Yeah.
like maybe it changes key or something. I don't know. My music theory is not very good, but
Yeah, it's kind of Beethoven-y, like the way it modulates. There's a few FNAF songs that do that. It's very clever.
yeah. So so yeah, it's interesting that your son's into that stuff too. I got my daughter when we went to Indianapolis. I got her a Five Nights at Freddy's shirt. We found it at a thrift store.
Oh, does she like it as well?
I think she likes the music. I don't know if she's really ever played the game or not.
Yeah, he likes the game, but yeah, we just really like the music. It's clever. It's just everybody. They're just normal YouTubers.
Is that
There's
what's
some
going
really
on? Just
nice
everybody
ones.
makes their own Friday Night Fridays songs, and
Yeah,
sometimes it get
that's
popular.
the thing. Yeah, you just write a song that's video game themed. Yeah, it's a whole genre. It's got a name. I can't remember what it is though, but it's gaming music. And yeah, but it's music in any genre really, as long as it's game themed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what question I was answering, but or thing I was commenting on. But do you have anything else you want to address?
Well, I was going to ask quickly about SE as well, because I feel like that's the one that I understand least. But I did think it might be, for example, if I walk into a place, I don't like walking into places, but something that happened was my friend was like, "Oh, there's not enough chairs at the table," and I didn't know what to do. Is that an SE thing? Like, obviously, I should have gone and got some chairs.
Right. I guess that is an SE8 thing. I mean, here's the issue with SE8. I found that I can never quite catch myself at the moment when I go from sitting someplace, being lazy, not doing stuff I should do, to when I transition to doing the thing. It's like, in some ways, my most unconscious function that I can never catch myself doing it like I can every other function. I can sometimes catch myself using it. Like, what's going on right now? Or why are you so slow? Oh, I'm FI processing something. Oh, that takes forever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my experience with FI is when I have to make a FI thing, like, usually it had to do with, like, feeling guilty about not spending more time with my dad or something. Maybe, like, let's say he scolded me about something, kind of blowing something out of proportion, and I haven't yet realized that maybe his feelings were actually hurt by this other thing, and he's just sort of acting out, and I'm trying to feel like if I should be mad at him or mad at myself for fucking up in some way, even though the thing he's mad at me about isn't the thing I really fucked up on. That kind of question takes me forever to think through or feel my way through or whatever.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. That's so interesting. So you have to make a decision about how you should feel?
Right. I have to make yeah, totally. I have to check the things and decide how I it took me a long time to realize that, like, I felt bad that I should have taken a different approach in this one argument I had with Rachel's dad. It I mean, I kind of realized I felt bad immediately afterwards, but it took until I got to the right arguments to acknowledge that was the case and it should be the case.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I understand. Yeah. Most of the time, I just sort of go, I'm feeling a certain way, and that's okay. And then I put it to one side, and my brain works it out later. Um, sometimes I'm present with it, but I'm okay with just putting it to the side while it works itself out.
I guess I can't understand how I feel except in terms of how I should feel.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it depends on your perception as well. But I will try and talk myself out of feeling a certain way. But I always feel how I feel,
What was your
and
answer to the
not the other way
crocodile?
around.
What was your answer to the crocodile river story? Did you hear that story? That question?
No, don't think so.
It's a story that says which of the five characters is the worst or the least honorable? Abby, Barry, Carl, Dennis, and Ernie. Okay, A B C D E. So Abby wants to go visit her boyfriend Barry, who lives on the other side of the river. Except the river's filled with man and woman eating crocodiles. So she can't swim across it to get there. So she goes to try to take the ferry, but she doesn't have enough money to take the ferry. Carl, the ferry driver, says to her, well, you don't have enough money to take the ferry, but if you want, you can sleep with me, and then I'll take you across the river. And she goes, no, I don't want to do that. So she goes ask her friend Dennis, who has a boat, if he'll take him across the river, explaining her situation. And Dennis goes, look, I don't want to get involved in this. And so then she goes back to Carl, and she says, okay, I've thought about it. I guess I have no other way across, so I'll sleep with you. And so she does, and he takes him across the river, and she goes to Barry and says, oh, Barry, I made this huge sacrifice to be with you. And he says, what? You did what? I break up with you. Go away. And he kicks her out. And she's very upset about this, and so she goes to her friend Ernie, who lives on that side of the river, and she says to Ernie, listen to what Barry did. I made this big sacrifice for him, and he just broke up with me and kicked me out. So Ernie says, I'll take care of that lout for you. And he goes and marches over to Barry's house and knocks on the door, and Barry answers it, and he begins beating up Barry. And Abby laughs as the sun sets on for the Crocodile River story. So who is the least honorable character in the story?
The least honourable. So the one beginning with D, he just said, I don't want to get involved.
Right. Abby goes to her friend
Um,
Dennis. He's got a boat, could take her across, but when she explains the situation, he just said, I don't want to get involved.
oh, okay. Well, I'd say Abby is the least honourable.
Okay, and why?
Well, because she's done something that she would have known Barry wouldn't have liked and hurt his feelings.
Okay. So, what would you say to somebody who answered Barry is the least honorable? Because whether it's fair or not, I expected more from Barry. It's just, his girlfriend, apparently, supposedly he loves her and everything, and she may have made a mistake making this big sacrifice, but he didn't even take a chance to listen to her or try to understand her position. He just kicked her right out.
Well, I wouldn't like it if someone did that to me. I know that wouldn't be if somebody said, "Look, I only slept with this person for you."
Okay.
I wouldn't accept that. So why should he? I think Abby might be playing Barry a little bit there. I think.
Okay, so you're putting yourself more in Barry's shoes than in Abby's shoes. Because I did have a commenter say that in response to this question. It's a video I made where I asked the question. I say, I'm interested in seeing everybody's comments, then I'll make a follow-up video explaining what they mean. And I did that as well. But it got a lot of comments, and one of the people did say that. They said what I basically just said about Barry, that it may not be fair of me, but I expected more from Barry. Said this commenter. I'm like, well, why did you expect more from Barry?
Really disappointed in him.
So I think that this question may elicit different responses from ENFPs and ESFPs, both of which are reflective of kind of an FI tool approach. In other words, whether you pick Abby, what it says about your cognitive functions depends on why you pick Abby. So you said because you wouldn't like that if it were you, you wouldn't buy that argument. Whereas other people would say because she broke her contract in some regard with Barry, or
yeah, that too.
Or that Barry did nothing wrong because anybody can break up with anybody at any time for any reason, which is what some TI person said. So that's it. So
I think Barry is the least person to blame in all of that.
I agree. I typically would say Ernie's the worst because he initiated physical violence without just cause. But some people would say Dennis is the worst because he could easily have solved the problem and just decided not to for no good reason. And he's supposed to be her friend, and he failed to fulfill his duties as her friend.
Yeah, but that's all assuming that people owe something to people. Like, Dennis was just minding his own business, and that's perfectly acceptable. And that Ernie guy is obviously just crazy, so we can't even expect him to be moral.
Okay.
So I think the only one who was kind of in a position where they could be held morally accountable was
Abby.
A, B, and C, I guess. But you can't really blame that guy.
Carl? You can't blame Carl?
He's just chancing his arm.
Don't you think he's being a little exploitative?
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't say him. I'm blaming Abby. I don't know what that's about. No, because Carl was single, so he was being dishonorable. But
if Carl was
Abby
married, would it be worse? Would Carl be more culpable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, yeah, I think that in general, F people tend not to answer Ernie. And I think the reason they tend not to answer Ernie is because something along the lines of what you said, that, well, he's like the issue of honorability links somehow to rationality, so that if he's not a rational person, then he's not really making decisions. He's just sort of rolling with it or something.
Yes. Yeah. People are in categories of whether or not that, like, how much you would expect from them. But in my head, that's the way it is anyway.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to stop this recording now. Do you want me to share it with you privately, or are you okay with me publishing?
Yeah, you can publish. Yeah, that's fine.
Fantastic. So I will do that shortly, and thank you very much.